I'd like to call this special meeting of the Old Lyme Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission to order. Today is Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. It's 6 p.m. and we're meeting at the meeting hall at Town Hall. So under old business, the only item on the agenda is a show cause hearing to address an issued cease and desist order for 16 Neck Road in Old Lyme, Connecticut, and 2 Sharon Drive in Old Lyme, Connecticut. I understand that the commission just went out to do site walks. I am not able to go due to my disability. I didn't want to be a liability to the property owners. But can you guys let me know what you saw in addition to the photos that Eric provided the other week?
So the photos are very reflective of the current condition. The storm drain erosion controls are completely full, have not been tended to, or clearly not working as they should. There's places on the hill where there's a lack of erosion control. The erosion control that's there is being bypassed because there's in certain spots because there's a lack of maintenance probably, and even I don't know, awareness perhaps. There is the retention pond. Eric pointed out that the retention pond has a drain pipe, and that pipe is not properly surrounded by the correct material of crushed stone or aggregate that should be there. It's rather just regular the earth and rocks that are present in the native soils. So I think part of the result of that is the pipe that carries the water that should be treated per se. It should have already been settled under the roadway to the wetland area is heavily silted. There's erosion control there that there was at one point there were staked hay bales, and they have literally washed away and are now growing hay. With what has remained, there used to be a silt fence there that is completely down. So that whole area immediately to the left of the driveway when you pull in, which is all wetlands that we're here for, is a large area of silt and stones and debris that's washed into there. Not only from probably the retention pond, but around some other hay bales that are further uphill, adjacent to the driveway, and also probably just down the hill. There's so much area that's been graded, disturbed, that it's just anytime there's rain, I'm sure it's just the result is a very heavy flow coming downhill. There's a new site for the house that's supposed to have a 20-foot buffer. It's difficult to know where the buffer should be. Most of the flags are gone. The wetlands flags are gone. It almost appears that the house is possibly sited wrong. So it's hard to tell where the 20-foot buffer should be if the house is not properly sited. So that's, I'm only mentioning that because not because we're building or zoning, but because it makes it difficult for us to tell where the 20-foot buffer from the house should be. Most of it, I'd still wager that 20 feet from the house has been graded, it's been worked, it's been upturned, and some good portions of the silt fence there are down and have not been maintained. One site looks like it's about to totally burst through. So that's my impression. I might have forgotten something.
Doesn't appear that a single E&S control measure on the site is currently correctly installed or adequate. At least, I mean, some of it's outside of our jurisdictional area, but obviously a lot of that material flows into wetlands jurisdiction. It's kind of making it an issue. They're all clearly long since unattended. I don't know that there's been any recent work. And the ones that are doing their job, like the drainage, what's that bit called, Eric?
The silt sacks there?
What's that?
The silt sacks you talking about?
Yeah. The ones that have been exposed to water are completely overwhelmed and
And
So
those
it's
are the
silted in.
drains.
Yeah, on the actual, so
The catch basins or the catch basins have silt sacks in them, but at this point, they're so overflowed that there's siltation around it. And,
they're
you know,
filled with siltation, basically.
There's also some staggered efforts at silt and erosion control, and in the hay bales, there's actually pipes.
To like get the water through the
Yes,
hay
that
bale.
help the water go.
But
through.
none of those are installed per ENS control.
No, I mean,
They're not staked or reinforced. There's none of
this
that.
is the erosion control plan that we approved. Okay, and obviously you can see, and we're coming in down here.
Yep.
So you can see that, you know, everything along the road that you saw is not on the plan.
Yep.
And, you know,
Yes.
none of what this looks like, you know, there's no resemblance to what we saw in the field.
So there's a whole new kind of secondary erosion track that runs right down through here. It's a mess and not on the plan to your point, Eric. And that all deposits where we're somewhere down here, right?
Yeah, this is the pipe I was showing you that where it comes out
Right.
into the wetlands.
So even the erosion controls on here, like this ENS measure, this is all collapsed in. And then this one over here, this is the outlet pipe here that Eric mentioned was not supported on properly by the appropriate gravel for the site plan.
And you can see it. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out. I went to law school. I could see just.
And these catch basins, I think here, at least this one totally filled, right? This one here totally filled.
The four closest ones, 1, 2, 3, 4 are totally filled.
So if the house that you see the footings for, and that's it there, it seemed lower.
No, it's further
Down
down.
here, yeah, it's down there. It's not even on this map.
It's a conceptual drawing. So this is not the final look. I can pull
Yeah.
to
It's like-
Sharon.
Yeah, it's down here further.
I would say it's definitely further than.
Let me pull two Sharon drawings for you. I have here.
I remember that the corner of the house that we reviewed was 45 feet away from the wetland, the closest wetland flag.
This is-
So it's well within our 100-foot upland review area, and that's where we were talking about, okay, coming back from that
Okay, so this is
45-foot,
Mhm.
20-foot buffer. Well, that's,
And it was wetlands flag 15. Mike, you're probably talking about, right? That's the closest one.
yeah, whatever the closest was. I think I took a measurement and it was 45
Yeah.
feet. And so we said, okay, I have 20 feet for yard and 20 feet for buffer.
And so in August, the last thing we approved for this site, I think there were 3 conditions. One of them was a vegetated 20-foot barrier here.
Mhm.
And to your point, how close this siting is to the actual ground is unclear. It certainly appears closer. I don't know.
And this might be touching on something outside of our jurisdiction, but has the building officer been out there to look at the foundation that's been put in this?
No, and in fact, one of the things I did mention on the site, there is a requirement for what's called a phase 1 foundation certificate, which is where the surveyor goes out there and affirms that it's basically in the right location. We have not received that on the site either. And from what the pictures show, it's not even a foundation yet. It's just sort of the wood underneath there, and it's not even level. Some portions of it are washed out underneath what they put down. So it's not ready for a foundation to go there at this point in time.
Mhm.
And it didn't seem to look like the footprint of what we're looking at here, just from eyeballing what I'm seeing on the map versus what we saw on the field.
It would be good to get a location of what's out there for potential foundation before they pour it and save.
Yeah.
Save some, rather than pour the foundation in the wrong place and have to move it afterwards.
And just for the record, because I know Fallon is going to be typing up the minutes for this and we don't have anyone in the audience. So Mr. Nacito is not here. He was not at the site walk.
He was not at the sidewalk. He is not present here. He specifically asked if, he could show us around the site, and he did not appear to show us around the site.
Just as just some general comments, it's obvious. I've only been out to the site twice.
Mhm.
Once when we were looking at the house and it wasn't in great shape then, as I recall, and recommendations were made as to what needed to be done. I don't think whoever's in charge of the site has a clue how to install erosion controls, certainly doesn't follow the plan. It's not in conformance with the state sedimentation erosion control manual. The hay bales aren't staked. You can't put a PVC pipe that's resting on a rock through hay bales and think that, when the water comes in, it's not gonna move and just blow the hay bales out. And that's probably what's been happening. The other thing is that the whole site, maybe 3 to 4 acres, is disturbed. And the critical rule is disturb what you're working on. Don't disturb the other stuff until you're done working on one end and you've stabilized that and move to a second and then the third. The whole site is disturbed, which makes it really difficult for us.
And your condition of approval specifically said that they were to stabilize anything they weren't working on so that it wasn't going to have erosion issues. So they're clearly not in conformance with your own conditions of approval as previously set forth.
It is now a giant silt covered hill.
Yeah, I mean, they have a huge pile of fill that's not circled with a sediment fence, which, wasn't eroding. I don't know. It looks new, relatively new,
Oh, no, it's been there for quite a while.
but it should be surrounded by a silt fence at the minimum because it's close to the road and close to our wetland.
They've been told that, not just by me, but by their own lawyer, who said someone's going to die. So yes, that is the words of their own lawyer. Someone's going to die. He's worried it's going to slide down.
Slide down.
It's Valvado, right?
Okay, Valerie Votto.
Is she aware of this cease and desist to your knowledge, or?
I did not. Okay, I copied her on the original notice. I did not copy her on subsequent notices. I don't know even if she's still being retained by Mr. Nocito.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, she was having issues regarding client control 6-8 months ago. So again, I gave her a copy of the original notice. I have not been in touch with her since.
Okay.
So I don't know. What we need to do is, I don't think the permittee has the skill or the staff to do what's done. So and I don't know that we can do this, but if we can, we should get a consultant that would make recommendations and supervise the installation, at least appropriate sedimentation erosion controls quickly.
Yep.
And the applicant's going to have to pay for it.
Yeah,
We have that ability in our regs.
we do.
Yeah.
And we have, again, when they poured the road, we had Jacobson Engineering out there to test and see whether it was proper at that point. And that cost was covered by Nocito. So
I'm sure a lot of engineering firms have staff that have certifications for erosion controls. And
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again,
in a day, they could figure it out and at least direct other people to install it properly in accordance with the state erosion control manual. And
I mean, that is a skill that certainly Jacobson's office has
Has.
on site, and they could get somebody out here relatively quickly to do.
and then they're not going to be dependent on him paying, because that might be part of the problem.
Well, we're gonna make sure to get a bill.
Yeah, well,
And-
he's not going to be able to work unless he pays the bill. If we say
And
that.
that doesn't top out any dollar value, because it seems like that's an expensive site too. And I personally agree, especially because there's been such a trend. We've been out there 4 or 5 times over the last
At least.
3 years.
Yep.
And even the first time we did the site walk for that lower house, when being presented with the site, it wasn't flagged. The erosion control was all trampled down. So it's okay, if that's an indicator of things to come, which it clearly was,
Mhm.
this is just building on itself. So the most robust response that we can do, I think, without putting ourselves in a position where it cost the town a bunch of money, it seems
again,
necessary.
Obviously, similar to the gravel pit operation, if we need to start litigation on this to try and collect monies that way, we can look at doing that as well. I don't know if you want to authorize that tonight or whether that's still to come. But at the trend line, it seems to be moving in that direction. Let's put it that way.
I mean, the road's not approved. The town's not going to accept the road unless he gets it built according to, and someone
Yeah,
certifies that
As
the erosion controls are terrible.
as I mentioned to you folks in the field, at the moment, the property owner has been notified that until the pipe underneath the road is put into the town's satisfaction, there will be no COs issued, because if that pipe fails, you're not going to be able to get any equipment, emergency equipment beyond that pipe to anybody who has a CO beyond that. So they are on notice. They will be getting no COs until that pipe is fixed.
And if there are violations outside of our jurisdiction, your zoning regs could take over
Yeah.
so that
We do have
whoever
erosion
we get
control issues
could.
under the zoning. I have not yet issued there. I wanted to start here. But if necessary, the next step is issue the zoning one, potentially revoke the subdivision under the planning. There are escalating steps we can take here.
So the scope of the C and D issued by you on behalf of this commission is just for the lower property within.
Lot 2 and.
Well,
and the-
no, because by statute, your jurisdiction extends even beyond 100 feet to anything that
There's
would
erosion.
that cause impact on the wetlands.
Yeah, that's-
So it's beyond 100 feet, but it's still causing impact on the wetlands. You guys have jurisdiction on it. That's why I wanted to start at the top and walk you all the way down, because it's clear that that entire trail of,
Goes into
erosion goes
stream court.
into your wetlands. So I think you have jurisdiction running all the way up to where that erosion is starting.
So does our current cease and desist essentially prevent him from working anywhere on the property?
Well, I'll read you exactly what it says. Provide a plan submitted by a professional engineer to create and maintain new erosion controls. Submit a report prepared by a certified wetland scientist on how the wetlands are to be suitably restored. Create a schedule for future inspections. You are ordered to cease and desist all activities within 100 feet of the inland wetlands located at 2 Sharon Drive. And then take those 3 steps in addition. The issues we cited in the cease and desist, deposition of silt and other materials. Obviously, you saw failure to comply with the terms of the wetlands permit 2416, specifically vegetated buffer, failure to submit a mitigation plan prior to construction, failure to notify the wetlands officer prior to any further work on the site, failure to stabilize all earth surfaces with a hay mulch or other suitable ground cover, failure to maintain silt sacks, failure to provide a certificate of soil and erosion control compliance. So those were what were cited in the original. And again, you saw evidence of all of those things on your inspection today.
So the reason I ask is only because it appears the applicant needs to be incentivized to accommodate the requests. And I think sometimes they think like, oh, that's just down here. Like I can deal with that while I do whatever. And I'm just kind of thinking like, so we're basically saying this whole area, which we saw, right? This whole area is washing into
Yeah.
these wetlands. The scope of the cease and desist proper, does it prevent the applicant from working on the property?
Not the entire site,
Not
but
the entire site.
only things that particularly are going to cause erosion that goes into the wetlands. So I can't stop them from working on the house that's going in over here, for
Right,
instance. But again,
But if we don't think this pipe that crosses this road is properly installed and at risk of collapsing, that becomes an issue for accessing these lots, right? I'm just saying like
Yes.
where it.
I think some of this is going to need to fall on zoning at this point.
Yeah.
Zoning,
I agree.
that house falls under zoning because that lot is affecting, because it just all flows downhill to the wetland and the house that we're concerned about goes by it.
Again, I will take care of the zoning next.
Yeah, we don't-
Okay? Trust me, I'll take care of it next. I wanted to get you guys involved first because the damage to the wetlands seemed really, imperative.
So what are our options tonight?
Yeah.
Well, the first thing is just to indicate you're not going to be lifting the cease and desist order. Because the whole reason we're having a show cause hearing within 10 days is so the applicant can argue that we should lift cease and desist order. So I think the first thing you need to indicate is you will not be lifting the cease and
I need
desist.
a motion.
Do you need a motion?
That in motion.
Yeah, that should be by motion, yes.
I'll make a motion to continue the cease and desist order that is currently in effect.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, passes
Okay. So
unanimously.
that's step one. Now we've got that out of the way. Step two is what additional steps the commission wants to take to remediate the site. And again, if that's, I'll sort of let the commission talk about that. You guys have had a bunch of ideas on it. I don't want to get in the middle of it, but certainly I will write down whatever you guys are saying here and put it in some sort of motion so that we can get some sort of a motion for additional sanction.
Want an accurate survey of where that new house is being built, where those footings are laid out.
As it relates to the conditions that we have already on the permit for the 20-foot buffer.
So there's really, in addition to what you have in the cease and desist, which is all stands essentially. Do we need kind of an actual laundry list of all the things or?
Well, again, if there are additional remedies that you are asking for, now is the time to ask for.
I
So,
think the
Well, I
survey-
think we need to clearly stake out the 20-foot buffer so that we know where it is. And that's obviously that comes off the house. So the proper siting of the house is in question.
It's
as
reflagged.
part of that. Right. I think this is not the most immediate, but I think we need a planting plan for the 20-foot buffer prepared by an appropriate professional person to include a list of plantings and their locations.
You can make that a subordinate bullet to item number 2 in the
Number
C&D.
2, yeah, I wrote that after the staking out the buffer and then a planting plan for that buffer area. So I'm putting that in, into that.
Let's
Bullet
get
point.
Jacobson out there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think getting someone out there that could tell us what needs to be done quickly to protect the wetland and the watercourse from additional siltation. Tell us the minimum that, and how much would that cost? I think there's going to have to be more done elsewhere, but maybe it's just silt fence with the proper silt sack opening and the silt fence that can take care of a larger flow than what we have there, staking all the hay bales, but I'd let our
It's a good point,
consultant
really.
tell us.
There's some things that can be done ASAP to stop
Right.
excess damage to what's currently done. Then we back up and say, okay, how are you going to fix the damage that has been done? Then we back up and say, make this site.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did we give him a timeline to get everything in the cease and desist to us?
Well, no, because this was coming up for the hearing today within 10 days.
Got it. So I would say by the next regular meeting, he has to have answers to us.
Okay.
But if we could get our consultant out there before to make us a recommendation by our meeting, they looked at it. This is the minimum that has to be done to protect the wetland and watercourse, and then we can take further action at the meeting. I mean, hopefully it won't.
And that he'll be responsible for Jacobson's bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would tell them that
At applicant's
accordance with
expense.
whatever section it is, that
Okay, I wrote right in here at applicant's expense. So we're gonna have that, on the bill. So, yeah, it's,
I think that's probably it.
now, I guess once we get one of these plans out there, I guess the question is, maybe this requires talking to Ed Casella. Can we do it ourselves and bill him, or do we have to basically have him do it? Because as Michael indicated, I don't have trust in him to do anything.
Yeah, it's obvious he's.
So there was like imminent extra environmental damage, right? Like,
So, I mean, that's, again, I mean, talk to Ed Casella about what realistic remedies we can seek here. Because I don't know that short of a court order, I'm gonna be able to get my experts out there doing the actual work at his expense. The immediate part of, yes, getting the plan together, I think we can bill him for. But the physically going on site and trying to make all this right, that's gonna be tens of thousands of dollars, I would expect.
Yeah, and
So-
I suspect there are financial issues.
I
I
know that,
suspect.
so,
And so we may not get anything. So it may alter, I mean, even if we were to fine him, he doesn't have the bucks, he's not gonna do it.
It could just be that
Well,
you talk to Ed and then at the next meeting, we say whether we want to proceed with litigation, because at least as of that date, I mean, as of the cease and desist, he's on notice of the issues, and then the court can use that to assess damages later on.
do we-
And he comes in with his own consultant and talks with us at the meeting, we listen.
Right.
And if he can convince us that he's now got a competent engineer that he's paying and can do what needs to be done, then he can do it.
So I know he's got a CO hanging over his head. Do we want to consider a bond for the?
Yeah, that's, wow. We don't have a bond?
we have no bond presently, and they are in theory supposed to have an erosion control bond. It is non-existent, so we need to.
Even zoning doesn't have it?
It never went to, it is a subdivision approval, it never went to zoning.
So, for the bond, I know we've said tens of thousands of dollars for this work. Does anybody have like a better idea of?
In fairness, I'd get
Should
an
we wait
estimate
for the-
from our guy first.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's have Jacobson give us a number on this, and then we'll.
Crazy.
Okay. And then we can ask for the bond, because then if we need to pull the bond, we've got resources to go from.
Yep.
so you talked about, if this goes to court, I know it is, when we discussed this with Mount Creek, there's a version of like, if there's fines, a bunch of them go to the state, right?
Yes, okay. Per statute, there's two different kinds of things we can get as far as money damages. One of which is attorney's fees and court costs. those come to us. The per diem fines that the state can impose anywhere from $10 to $1,000 per day. Those fines go to DEP, not to us.
There isn't, we have an ordinance though that allows us,
We,
I don't know that it's ever been used.
yes, but that's, again, going to court using the 22A, 42A remedies there. Those fines theoretically go to the state. In fact, I know they go to the state because we did this in East Adam with Tim Mellon's airport. So yes, I mean, ultimately, the advantage of getting zoning involved is that if you bring a zoning enforcement action, all those fines do come to the town. They don't go anywhere else. So what I offer to towns is if we're going to do enforcement actions, we have to have a zoning component because we want to make sure that monies come here and not elsewhere. So no offense to DEP.
Believe me, it's fine.
You're allowed to just transport bags of money from.
Oh, yeah, right,
That's on the
definitely. I
record.
have access to all the money.
Is
But-
that oh shoot, I just lost my thought, sorry.
Take your time.
So it may be just a formal letter to the zoning commission and the building official, just alerting them to
Yeah, what
what's
we've
happening
done.
here.
That was actually gonna be my question. If we do go the legal route, if this does end up there, do those lawsuits get combined and we become like co-complainants?
Yes, I would presumably try and join the lawsuits together because I mean, the underlying issues here are really the same set of underlying issues. I mean, we can argue about what damages are wetlands damages versus what damages are zoning damages, but the overall site mess is the overall site mess. Trying to split it evenly and say, this is your mess, this is this, look, we're gonna put it all together and have it all argued at once.
And typically it would just be town of Old Lyme versus.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
and-
wetlands.
and all the things that would go with that complaint, right?
Yeah, the attorneys would figure that out for us.
Yeah, I would, again, I will
The
work.
zoning commission would have to,
Well, again, theoretically, we would be,
Theoretically,
yeah,
unless
Matt
you
Willis,
could
the
do it.
zoning commission attorney, as well as the
Yeah.
wetlands commission attorney, how they, I will sort that out later down the road when we get there. But the immediate, again, you guys are just wetlands for starters. I will have the wetlands commission formally notify zoning commission and building official of what actions are being taken. And then at the next zoning commission meeting, I will address this under the enforcement matters.
What would that come for?
Do we need a motion for the consultant at all? Or-
Well, I would ask for a motion regarding all the additional conditions you asked. You've done here an accurate survey of the new house, a stake out of the buffer and the planting plan, the wetlands reflagging, Jacobson's office to come out and review the erosion controls at the applicant's expense, consulting with Ed Caselli.
to make a recommendation as to what would replace what's, not in compliance. They're gonna come up with a plan for us theoretically to implement with
Okay,
a
well, we,
price.
we need to get to a motion first, so can
Yeah.
Eric finish?
So, you've also asked for erosion sedimentation control bond estimate by Jacobson, a letter to the zoning commission and the building official, and again, reporting back on this by the next regular meeting.
I'll make a motion for all of that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about regarding the site here?
Has he reached out at all?
Heard nothing.
Okay.
I've heard nothing. I was surprised he wasn't there tonight. I guess I shouldn't have been that surprised, but I thought for sure since he's asked, can I be there to walk you around? But he did so. But
It was interesting to me that he asked to do his sidewalk at the same time as all the other sidewalks. So weeks out,
yeah,
like he didn't care about the timeline and we did. So,
well,
I'm surprised he didn't do anything in the time since our last meeting and today.
yeah, that was
He did nothing.
the shocker to me is that I went out there yesterday and I was today. And even like the silt sacks, which it wouldn't take much just to replace the silt sacks, and it's not that expensive. He didn't even do that.
It is the lack of effort that is the most, concerning.
I think he doesn't have any money to pay people to go out and do this work. And that's why he didn't care about the timeline because he can't do anything.
Okay, guys. At some point, we need a motion to adjourn. I have it at 6:29. If you want.
I'll make a motion. All those-
Second.
All those in
Someone may have to
favor?
Take
Aye.
over the,
Aye.
take over the project.
Fine.